A very warm welcome to everyone who is dialing in. Thank you so much for spending your time with us to celebrate World Youth Skills Day with Aflatoun and Soft Education. I'm Janine from Soft Education. We are a technology nonprofit, and we enable people to empower themselves through education, leveraging technology. We are excited to be the digitalization partner of Aflatoun, who is recognized as the world leader in life skills and social and financial education. And we are joined by a diverse group of speakers working across different geographic locations. And let me first introduce our speakers. From Asia Pacific, Balu Iyer is the Regional Director for the International Cooperative Alliance ICA Asia Pacific. Welcome. And from Africa, Tillmann Guenther is the Adolescent Development Specialist in the Education section of UNICEF Utopia. And from the European Union, Yevgeniya Rzayeva, Regional Project Manager, EU for Youth. Thank you. And Roland Monash from Aflatoun International, who has a global presence, and myself representing Soft Education. We work mostly in Asian and African countries. We would like this webinar to be youthful and interactive for our participants who are young and perhaps young at heart. So at any point of this webinar, please feel free to ask questions using the chat function. And without further ado, it's with great pleasure for me to welcome Roland, CEO of Aflatoun International, to say a few words.
Good morning, Janine. Good morning to everyone. Really happy to join you today on Youth Skills Day. Youth Skills Day is, of course, a very important moment to highlight that it's absolutely vital to equip young people with skills for employment, decent work, and entrepreneurship. And we have to realize that the reality is that the majority of young people are not adequately equipped with entrepreneurship skills or employability skills. And that's why I'm really quite excited to be with you today to discuss this important topic. They don't have the skills, but at the same time, COVID has been highlighting the need to have these skills to cope with adversity and to ensure that you find a job or make an income. The reality is, and I'm looking forward to hear from the different regions, is that many young people are transitioning from school to work life without being adequately prepared. Think about an adolescent girl who has dropped out of school in Tanzania. She will not get a diploma. She will not get a job in the corporate sector, not in the with the government. She will have to start an enterprise, but she doesn't have the skills. It will be survival enterprising, which she will be doing in her life if she doesn't get these important youth skills. Think about a student in secondary school in Brazil. He's learning, he's studying, but he doesn't know anything about money. And you need to have skills about money if you want to get a good job, if you want to start an enterprise. Think about a university student in Indonesia, learning a lot of very important things, but not getting the skills for employability. The majority of employers are saying around the world, these youth from universities are not having the skills which you need to work with me in my company. So the majority of young people are not getting the skills to be prepared to transition from school to work life. Now, recognizing this challenge at Aflatoun, working with over 300 partners around the world, we have developed a sort of innovative approach to inspire young people, to inform them, engage them, coach them, and assist young people to gain the skills to start a private enterprise or achieve gainful employment, finding a job. It's called Aflatoun. It's a combination of social, financial skills, but also employability and entrepreneurship skills. It comes together. And we have developed an easily adaptable tool which can be adapted to any country context around the world. And the initial results are really great. Young people are finding a job, young people are starting a business and are becoming profitable. Really looking forward today to hear the experience from the different speakers, different perspectives, and from different regions. When we talk about different, we're also talking about different delivery models. More and more, and COVID has learned us that we need to look at the in-school approaches, out-school approaches, online approaches, offline approaches. And specifically today, I'm therefore also very excited to to do the launch together with Janine on the new or the platform by Solve Education to integrate employability skills into the gaming platform, Dawn of Civilisation. And I'm not going to elude on that. I'd like to give it back to you, Janine, to tell us more about it.
Thank you so much, Roland. So yes, like Roland said, we are so excited to be partnering with Aflatoun, and right now our Aflatoun's employability skills is already available on our platform, Dawn of Civilization, as well as on our chat platform at the bot. So both are designed for different demographic. Dawn of Civilization is designed to be able to teach both offline and online on Android, iOS, and also PC. And then the chatbot side of things is for people who have very low memory, to be able to also access the information as well. But, I would not, delve into those details today. And I would love for anybody who's interested to learn more to reach out via the checkbox here, and my team will be in touch. Because I want to keep this webinar also very in the spirit of World Youth Skills Day. Well, I don't know about the rest of the world, how you guys call your mom, but my mom is what we call in Asia a tiger mom. So growing up, she would sign me up for so many different lessons, and she will have ideas to solve any problems that we had, right? So I was a very shy person. And so my mom thought signing me up as to go for speech and drama lessons will improve my communication skills. Well, even though I've ended up playing the role of trees and plants during the high school, primary school, elementary school plays, but I wouldn't be here today without that training of my communication skills. So my question to the audience right here is, what is one skill that changed your life? I would really love to hear from all of you from the chat box here. Please introduce yourself and share the one skill that changed your life. We would love to feature some of your responses on our social media. And with that, I'm going to go over to Balu Iyer, who will share with us cooperative as drivers for youth entrepreneurship and development. Over to you, Balu.
Thank you very much, and thank you for inviting the ICA to be part of this online discussion. It's an honor for me to be part of this distinguished panel. The International Cooperative Alliance is the global body which represents cooperatives worldwide, and cooperatives are found in almost all countries and in all sectors. And it is estimated that around 12% of humanity is part of cooperatives. Aflatoun International and ICA, especially the Asia Pacific and the Africa office, have a long-standing relationship. And we are pleased that this is continuing through participation in our respective events. I see the relationship between Aflatoun and ICA to be a symbiotic one. Aflatoun works with children and youth and inculcates in them a habit of savings, financial discipline, and on enhancing their skills using both offline and online means. This means that they are building a solid base for the present and for the future. So at ICA, we see that we can capitalize and build on this as we are looking to attract young people into the cooperative fold. Our values and principles resonate with young people. When you talk to young people, these days they rate social and economic inequality as the top challenges the world is facing, both globally and locally. Sustainable growth is a concern for them, and a matter of economic common sense. And millennials favor working in a place where there is focus on people and purpose, not just products and profits. So cooperatives fit well as we are a business enterprise which provides individuals with ownership. It is democratically controlled, and it addresses the social, economic, and environmental needs. skills training gives expertise in an area. And these days, digital skills are in demand, as well as skills in the renewable energy space. So it helps individuals to equip them for the market. It improves their earning capacity and it builds confidence and expands their network. But where cooperatives come is when you look at individuals, once they have a skill, then they have to go out on their own and look for opportunities. When you bring them together as a cooperative, then it helps to bring together people with skills together, pool their resources, start an enterprise where they are owners and they have a say in the way it is run, earn not just wage, but also share in profits and in a lifelong experience. So in short, we are talking, when we talk about cooperatives, we are not just talking about skills for employment, but skills for ownership. And let me give you an example. In 2016, we had the first Asia Pacific Cooperative Youth Summit in Bali. And as part of this, we organized what's called the Co-op Pitch, where we asked young people to come together in groups and come up with ideas in terms of what kind of a business they would like to start and how they would incorporate corporate values and principles. So the first prize went to a young group led by a young lady from Lamak. It's called the Lamak Multi-Purpose Cooperative in Pinamujang village. And their idea was to develop an organic farm, train youth in organic farming. So they were giving them a skill, but also getting them certified. Then bring these youth together as a cooperative so that they could grow these organic vegetables and fruits. But they also linked them up with hotels and hostels where they could sell the vegetables. So it's been quite a successful venture where you're not only having skills, but you're bringing them together as a group and you're getting them into business where they're getting employment and they're able to share their profits. So I think cooperatives help in terms of building skills, bringing people together and giving them ownership. Before I end, let me also use this opportunity to encourage youth who are present here today to join the third Asia Pacific Online Youth Summit, which is going to be held from July 27th to 29th. In the summit, in addition to taking part in the events, we will have a co-op pitch where we seek ideas. So I'd like to encourage you all to join the summit, pitch your ideas, and there are, of course, awards for the first, second, and third prize. Again, thank you very much for inviting the ICAP to be part of this very invigorating discussion. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Balu, for sharing. Indeed, it's so interesting and to hear the different ideas that the youths are bringing to the table and the different business ideas that they're implementing. And I just think that, you know, the next biggest ideas are actually right now in the minds of our youths, right? So with that, I just want to shout out to some of the audience who have shared their skills from Somali, from Sri Lanka. Thank you for joining. And Somali was saying cooperative skills, collaboration, like Anastasia from Aflatoun was saying, is really the spirit of today, right? And the problems that we are trying to solve are just so widespread. I don't think that it's one organization can solve it all, which is exactly why we are here discussing, because Aflatoun has world-class content and Soft Education is able to digitize it. And with all of you here, we can roll it out and impact even more people. So that is really the spirit of World Youth Skills Day and all of us being here. So with that, I'm going to hand the stage over to Tillmann, who will share some reflections about employability and concern. Over to you, Tillmann.
Thank you so very much. Good morning, everybody. I'm Tillmann Guenther, the Adolescent Development Specialist with a focus on skills development. I'm part of the education section within UNICEF Ethiopia. And I'm very happy to be here. And I'll try throughout today to embrace the inner child, Janine, as you said this morning, right? Because let's keep it as lively, as easy, as flexible this morning as we can. And what I heard even from Roland's statements, but also from your introductory notes, is that seemingly we're all concerned, right? We're all concerned about employability. And so this is why I also picked the topic for my input statement this morning in that regard, to ask myself, to ask ourselves about employability, but whose concern is it at the end of the day anyway? And so by asking that question, I think we arrive immediately at an actor-centered view or kind of an actor-centered approach, right? By saying that, well, it's a concern for young people, but also at the same time, as Janine, you mentioned already, it was your mom who was concerned about, most likely, maybe your future employability, right? It is so the family has a stake in that, or the parents or caretakers, but it is more than that. Universities and schools or learning institutions these days ask themselves about what can we do to enhance employability? So they are concerned to a certain degree as well. And I think maybe we have today some space and room to further explore that, as well as, and very, very important, the private sector, right? The private sector, from a different point of view, is concerned about the employability. And so I think an actor-centered approach, an actor-centered view helps us maybe to talk a little bit more differentiated about the topic, a little bit more by investigating then and asking the question, who's concerned, to look at the different roles, right, the responsibilities, as well as the expectations of each individual actor that has to share, that supports this overall process, let me say, to enhance the employability, to improve, to strengthen, to build the employability, in our case of adolescents and young people. Taking a step back, I think it is always important to have a very quick agreement or on what employability actually means, or how is it defined, or how some of the actors define employability. And I find the definition from the European Center for the Development of Vocational Training quite useful in that regard, as it is an open definition and says, and I've highlighted it, it says it's a combination of factors, and I'm getting to that a little bit more in more detail, which enable individuals to progress or to get into employment, to stay into employment, right, and to make a career. So it's a combination of factors for somebody to get a job, stay in a job, and make a career within that job. And by highlighting that there's a combination of factors, because usually when we think about the definition of employability, we immediately say, well, it's about skills, right? And these and education or knowledge. And this morning, the linkage between employability and skills was immediately there for most of the participants, and I believe it will continue to be the case. However, I think equally obvious, as we all know, there's much, much more that is part of an overall employability. So here, if we then think about those factors, there are multiple factors, and the combination of those multiple factors in terms of the knowledge and skills, quite obviously, but it's also about the attitude, and it's about behavior, it's about having the confidence, it's about having a certain degree of experience, which is then linked to confidence, having networks, right, having access to certain things, certain services. All these things taken together will help, in our case, an adolescent and a young person to get into a job or to stay in a job and to progress throughout. So by taking that view, this actor-centered view, and then having that same or a similar definition of employability, stressing the multiple factors, we then return back to the actors and say that, okay, so who are the actors that can support employability with a focus on knowledge? Who are the actors when it comes to enhancing experience for young people, or the confidence, or shape their behavior in one way or another? So I think now looking then at some of the actors, and obviously it's the self, right? It's me. So I have a role to play to be concerned these days in many contexts about maybe my employability and what can I do? So it is self-study, self-learning. These days through digital means, you can enhance your general education if you do, of course, have the access to the internet, have devices, have the necessary data bundle, right? So Khan Academy is one, but also various youth challenges that, among others, UNICEF and partners have designed in the last couple of months to increase life skills, to have human-centered design workshops and so on and so forth. So there's a very strong element that young people can do themselves, but they also, in terms of what the self can do is, for instance, many life skills that shape behavior, that shape an attitude, that increase confidence, are also developed through engaging in sports, right? In sports clubs and sports activities, in collective activities. So there's a multitude of things that one can do. Moving on to another key actor, it's schools and universities. And here I think maybe we have the opportunity to speak today a little bit more about this, is the fact to what extent, beyond foundational literacy and numeracy, but to what extent should schools actually be concerned about the employability, right? Because doesn't that lead to a very, or maybe one-dimensional view in having this kind of market relevance, the utility or the value function of saying that, well, we are in a sense producing graduates directly for the labor market, but isn't school education much more, right? And what room should be given to more employability skills in terms of life skills, right? Education that, for instance, UNICEF with Aflatoun in Ethiopia and many other countries has supported for in-school students through gender clubs or Aflatoun clubs as a co-curricular activity in the afternoon, right? That is something, but also think about now in the case for Ethiopia that the government is very keen on introducing for secondary age, grade 11 and 12, CTE, career and technical education. To prepare them for that transition into the labor market. And here, as discussions and conceptualizations are still going on, is that very question, what room should be given to CTE education? And I think maybe even ourselves today, we can think about it, is grade 11 and 12 the most suitable, the most applicable space for this? Or maybe even, since we have in Ethiopia, but also many other countries, the situation where not many students enrolled make it actually, to grade 11 and 12. So is there an opportunity to maybe introduce, again, depending on the definition, then some activities to strengthen some factors of the employability definition that I presented here on the slides. And the similar thinking applies to the university, right? I mean, to what extent should universities produce employable graduates? And what is essentially university all about? And so here, thinking again, where can we create opportunities for young people as a curricula, but also as a co-curricular activity in schools and or universities, the opportunities to strengthen their employability skills. And what are these employability skills? I'm not talking about TVET this morning, because here we have a very clear linkage and a very clear labor market relevance, where you say you enter a TVET school, well, to build a specific set of skills and competencies to undertake a certain a task for an occupation. The last actor that comes to mind here and has recently in many developing countries also found a role, I call it as a learning partner, are private companies, right? Also thinking about how can we have not only skills development, also building of confidence, having experience, gaining experience, feeling more comfortable. I like the term even orientation for young people, especially for the school to work transition, to know and to learn what can I do, where I'm good at, where I'm not good at, which path I would like to pursue. And so here, any interface between young people and companies, small, medium, large-sized, informal, formal companies, I think is of value. And here's an opportunity and need to explore and conceptualize this much more broadly and much more sophisticated to see how can we ensure that young people engage with companies at various stages, maybe even at the school level, through visits, right? Through having talks with enterprise managers to get a little bit of an idea of what's going on, to shape their own ideas, to support them in this overall orientation, right? But also job shadowing that is a little bit more in depth, I believe, than engagement, or internships. And again, I don't speak too much about then the apprenticeships here, because this is usually the modality through work-based learning modalities that is used with a technical education, so the whole TVET segment. But this is something where we may think about and say, what I've been looking at is learning beyond the school. Right? Learning beyond the traditional school setting. So we move into the digital arena, which is self-paced and based on own initiative, whether it is formally recognized or not, but there's a huge space beyond the school, but also to see work-based learning that could be formally and or informally linked to a learning space, to a school and or university. So these are some of the options, I think, given that we should consider much more seriously, given the increasing successes and numbers of school enrollment, but also then school dropouts. And here then to be very careful, where can we bring in those alternative pathways or alternative modalities, especially for still the many
children that drop out within the first 4 years of primary school education. And as you said, Roland, you mentioned that what can we offer? And that is a question that I've asked myself also within the capacity at UNICEF. What can we offer to a 15-year-old adolescent girl that dropped out of school with having very limited, maybe foundational numeracy and literacy, but it's unlikely for her to return to primary school education because this is not where she is, this is not where her livelihood is all about and her current situation. So how can we then link here at the age of 15, maybe even at the age of 14, look into the employability and what combination of factors to close now is needed for her to either enter the labor market or actually think about overall livelihoods. Let me stop here. You didn't interrupt me, Janine, which is a good sign. Thank you very much for your attention, and I'm happy to engage with you further.
Thank you so much, Tillmann. I mean, I think what you've mentioned, and employability is not just the hard skills, but a lot of times about the soft skills and what are the skills that we need to empower this youth of today to succeed in life. And out of school youth and informal education is a space that self-education really put a lot of work and thought about. And I do see that there is some interesting trends in the labor market. And like you said, the theme is about, collaboration, right? Schools can't do it alone. Vocational training centers can't do it alone, nor companies. And what's interesting is, Google and Apple a couple of years ago already said that they don't really need for you to show a fancy degree for you to be hired, as long as you're able to show a certain skill. And just like us, how we hire our own employees. Recently, we hired an amazing young lady from Egypt, and we didn't really ask what are her qualifications, but what we actually did was, because she's a developer, we're a tech company, so she's a developer. We sent her a test on hacker space, and as long as she was able to pass the programming test and did really well, and she's hired, right? And in terms of, what are the skills, what are life skills that we need to equip people with? I just want to also shout out to the participants, and I see that the message board is so active, which is really great. So thank you everybody for participating, right? Ariane talking about one skill that changed her life is about learning good English language skills. And you know what? That is the skills that self-education has also identified after studying different markets. And especially in the markets that we work in, we saw that learning English actually increase people's not only learning earning capacity, but more importantly, access to knowledge and resources, right? I think today we don't know what skills will be available, what skills will be relevant, or what jobs will be available in, say, 5, 10, or 20 years' time. But what is really important for all of us is the ability to learn how to learn. And in order to learn how to learn, we need to, be able to read, comprehend, think, analyze, to be able to learn and be a lifelong learner, right? So that is that skill is something that us as self-education is really obsessed with. And with that, I think I'm going to call on to Yevgeniya to share about life skills and entrepreneurship skills with the work that she's doing with EU for Youth.
Yes, thank you, Janine.
Thank you.
Thank you, Janine. Good morning, good afternoon to everybody. Yeah, actually, I was listening to Tillmann and referring to what Tillmann said. Actually, the organization which I represent, the SOS Children's Villages, we were actually, and we are that kind of actor whose concern is to support the youth in pursuing their goals, in developing their skills, and in general in supporting them. So just today I would like to share with you the results of our 3-year project. And let me ask Julia to, the next slide, please. Yeah, so the EU for Youth project is funded by the European Union and the Austrian Development Agency. And it started in February 2018 and has been implemented for more than 3 years already. And actually it is already accomplished. The project was implemented in 3 countries of the post-Soviet space, Armenia, Belarus, and Ukraine. And it covered more than 1,000 disadvantaged youth from 14 up to 35 years old. If we're talking about the implementers who were implementing the project, it was made up a consortium of the partners in each participating country, represented by SOS Children's Villages and the local partners who were responsible for the entrepreneurship component of the project. And regarding the methodology, Aflatoun International was and is the strategic partner within this project because we took Aflatoun Next Economy training program as the basis and as the key methodology, as the main training curriculum for the young people. The training program consists of 2 modules, life skills module, namely like self-identification, problem solving, critical thinking, financial literacy, etc., really core and very necessary life skills for the young people. And the second module is employability module, like how to write a CV, how to make a job searching, how to pass the interview, what problems there can be on the workplace, how to interact with the colleagues, with the management, etc. So yeah, this training program was very important for the young people because it covered everything that they should have. And the next slide, please. I should say that primarily before we started to teach the young beneficiaries, we needed to adapt and to contextualize the program. the curriculum to the social and political context of the participating countries, and which is also very important, to the actual needs of the disadvantaged youth, because we targeted the disadvantaged youth in these 3 countries. So yeah, after the program was contextualized, we have trained the local specialists, the master trainers who were certified to use the training curriculum, and to train other specialists, the youth educators, youth workers, and to work with youth directly. So at this slide, you can see our expected results, which were planned within the project at the very beginning, and actual results that we have achieved. So I'm very proud and thankful to all the partners, the project staff, and everyone who were involved, because we have equipped a significant amount of young beneficiaries from 3 countries, including young men and young women, even more young women than young men, which is very nice. So a lot of, you can see 838 young beneficiaries successfully participated in the training program on life skills, on employability skills, and actually after that they had an opportunity to participate in vocational courses and to pass the internships. So the vast majority of the young beneficiaries really managed to find the employment, or to start their own businesses after the project. So I think it's a very nice result, and especially taking into account that at the beginning of the project they really lacked. There was a lack of motivation, and I will also talk about that further. And they didn't actually, the young people, they didn't believe in themselves. They lack self-confidence, and really they appreciated everything that the project gave to them, and at the very end of their whole way, after these project activities and courses and trainings and coaching sessions, etc., they were completely other people, and it's really great. If I would have more time, I would share like a lot of success stories from the project. But if you look at the next slide, please. This is one of the examples which I would like to demonstrate, because why I think it is very important, because it showcases the cooperation between the project and the government level. It happened in Belarus within the project. Why I think it is very important? Because I think we can have a numerous number of projects, numerous numbers of interventions, activities for the young people, but to ensure the sustainability and to achieve the sustainable changes, the systematic changes in youth-related topics and in topics of youth employability, employment, entrepreneurship, we need really sustainable changes at the government level. And luckily, within this EU for Youth project, we had such a good example, which I would like to showcase. It was the cooperation with the Minsk City Institute of Education Development in Belarus. And from the very start, they were very skeptic about the training curriculum, I should say. But they, after that, after some time, they really saw the results and the changes in the positive changes in the young people's life. Also together with them in close cooperation, there were several stages, as you can see on this slide, like building cooperation and sharing, raising their awareness about what the curriculum is and what results it can bring, what positive outcomes for the young people it can bring. So as a result, to cut the long story short, I can say that now they are officially using the training curriculum for the upskilling process for their specialists, for the professional state youth educators and youth workers who are working with the young people in Minsk in Belarus. This is a good example, I should say, and also there are a lot of success stories, and I would like also to suggest you, if you have any questions, please feel free to ask. And now,
thank you.
The time is up. Over to you, Janine.
Thank you, Yevgeniya. I'm sure we will invite you to share some success stories towards later part of the discussion, when we have a very casual discussion all around. Well, with that, actually, what I will do, and thank you so much for all the questions coming in. Perhaps I would just attempt the first question to Yevgeniya before I move on to my next question. How did you pick the participants for this program?
It's a very good question. Actually, there were some requirements, even before the project started. At the development stage, there were some requirements from the donors, because their focus was on the disadvantaged youth aged from 14 up to 35 years old. Disadvantaged meaning like the young people facing any kind of problems. For example, if we are talking about the Ukraine, we have a lot of internally displaced people from the eastern part of Ukraine. Regarding Armenia, we had Syrian Armenians. Also, single parents, single mothers, families, young parents with 3 or more children, or with a child with disability. So there were certain criteria which were predefined at the project development stage, and we were guided by this criteria to admit the young people into the project. But in general, there was an open call which was distributed through the social networks and media. We were focused on this selection criteria and on the age frames, let's say.
Thank you so much for sharing. I'm sure our participants are also very curious for the speakers to share what is one skill that changed your life. And with that, I'm going to call on to Roland to share first.
I think, I've been seeing so many great skills.
Yes.
And I was wondering what skill which I felt was really good. One of my skills I think is most useful is the ability to segregate what's important and urgent from what's not important and not urgent. It's maybe one people don't think about, but that has been a skill for me which has been extremely helpful.
Yeah, I would imagine that must be so helpful, especially leading an organization. You have so many things you do, and then more things that your donors want you to do, and more things your users, your partners want you to do, right? So how do we prioritize without working 24 hours a day or 48 hours a day? That is indeed a very important skill. Thank you so much for sharing, Roland. And over to Balu, what would you say is one skill that changed your life, having worked in so many different countries? Balu, can you unmute yourself, please?
Sorry about that. I would not say skill, but what I would say is more a practice. How do we constantly keep practicing till you achieve? And one example is when I was practicing for a marathon, it's not just physical, but it's also how you practice your mental makeup. How do you build that, both the physical and the mental? And so you need to keep practicing, master your inner strength, and see that how you pace yourself. It's not just running a sprint, but then how do you pace? So you need to really look at what your end goal is, and how do you prepare for it, how do you practice, and how do you get there.
That's right. You know, life is actually a marathon, not a sprint, right? And sometimes, you know, our current education system, especially in, you know, in the developing world, perhaps we sprint all the time because we have to prepare for this exam we have not studied, so we do sprinting all the time. But when you go into the real life, actually, it's such a long marathon. So thank you so much for sharing, Balu. And I think over to Tillmann, what is the one skill that changed your life?
The skill is dealing with frustrations. I think I don't like the term dealing with failure. That's more in the entrepreneurship space, and thinking about business ideas, models, prototypes, and then they fail. But it all involves some level or some degree of frustration, right? And so I think working also among others in the international public sector, but also whether it is working with NGOs or the private sector, when you work with, especially in partnerships with colleagues, in teams, there are moments where you expect something, right? And you expect, let's say, a project document or a budget, or you expect somebody to submit something on time, right? Or a good result after lots of people have inputted quite significantly their time, their knowledge, their effort, and then it doesn't work out, or it doesn't even happen, right? And that leads to frustration. And then there are moments, where you're like, oh man, so how can I deal with that? And that you keep going, that you manage that. And I think this covers actually lots of life skills that so it is more this kind of concept of dealing with frustrations, which I really think has helped me significantly, and still working on it every day, to manage life, professional lives. Yeah.
I see that you have a head of black hair, so I'm sure you're managing your frustration very well. Over to Yevgeniya. What is the one skill that changed your life?
Janine, please welcome me to your club, because communication skill is also a skill which changed my life.
Welcome.
Yes. Actually, as a typical introvert, I thought that, this natural shyness and modesty is actually an inborn feature and can't be changed. But actually, it was a really big surprise for me when I was a little bit younger, that this communication skill is like any other skill which can be developed, which can be improved. And it really gave me, and it really gives you such big opportunities in the professional life, in the social life, in the personal life. It really can't be underestimated. So that's the answer.
Yeah, I think actually a lot of us are closeted introverts, isn't it? I myself, I'm an introvert too, so I can definitely identify with that. In fact, actually, can we have a hands up who are the introverts over here, right? That will be me as well. Roland too. Wow, a lot of introverts here. Diana, Balu as well. Wow. Okay, so we can all form a club, right? And definitely, introvert doesn't mean we can't communicate, right? Just that we communicate differently. So I really love that sharing. Thank you so much, Yevgeniya. And actually, that leads me to my next question. So, what are some biggest challenges you faced, when implementing your program in the EU, or what are the biggest challenge that you see in youth employability and empowerment in the European Union?
Yeah, it's a very important question, and the answer is really simple, and no need to think a lot about it, because I think it's not a surprise that the low motivation is one of the biggest challenges. If we're talking about any kind of youth, because a lot of us, many of us have children, either small children or teenagers already, but we can see and we can observe that they really lack motivation. And if we're talking about disadvantaged youth, the targeted youth we had to work with within our project, the motivation level is even lower, and it was a really a challenge to work and to struggle to face such challenges, because if the young person doesn't want to be supported, doesn't want to be to improve,
almost, right?
Yeah, it's there will be some results, but not so significant. And if we're talking about disadvantaged youth, we needed to, in order to improve and to raise their motivation, we needed to work with their initial, let's say, problems, psychological issues, some traumas, stigmas, etc., etc. Because if you don't, if you're not stable at that grassroots level, you can't go further and develop further.
I agree. I mean, motivation is something that we eat, breathe, and think in self-education, because and it seems to be a common theme across the world as well. I hear motivation all the time. And in fact, motivation in the digital space is even more difficult, right? Because motivation on a face-to-face basis, you can actually somehow influence the youth to learn or do something, right? But if it's digital and remote learning, they can easily do some other things, or what are other things that they feel like they want to do, and it's a lot harder to motivate. So for us, we use of course, game mechanics, game psychology, since games are so motivating and people don't need a reminder to come in to play, Candy Crush or Mobile Legends, right? So can we use that game psychology and mechanics to motivate them to learn is something that we work a lot on. And I'm just wondering, have you also seen similar issues of motivation in your areas, Balu and Tillmann? Balu, if you're saying something, can you please unmute yourself? Balu, if you don't mind, can you please unmute yourself?
Okay. Yes. I think for us, the challenge is, how do we get the youth to know more about cooperatives? There isn't an avenue for young people to learn. And when you look at the curriculum, you look at in schools and universities, cooperatives are business enterprises, but it's a different model where it gives the members ownership. But even business schools don't talk about different forms of enterprises. They just focus on an investor-driven model. So that's one of the challenges for us, to see how we can let youth know about the diversity of opportunities which are there, and how do we then also attract them into the cooperative fold. So how do we make it much more open? So I think that's the challenge for us, is the enabling environment, the education, letting people young people know about cooperatives and how it resonates with what their values and principles are, and to be able to get them into the fold.
And, for us, what we do is that we design assuming no intrinsic motivation to learn. And I don't know if that's something that all of you also think about as well. Actually, with that, I'm just wondering, I will pull Tillmann in to ask him, in what skills do you think education systems need to invest more in?
Janine, thank you, but allow me to go back and come to
motivation.
Motivation, because I think motivation, is then an individualized issue, saying that, oh, he or she has low motivation, and I think, or low intrinsic motivation. But I think that leads then maybe to some assumptions. People may say, oh, low motivation means people are lazy, people don't really care. And I think we need to, of course, obviously look into the context, right? In the context of where does that low motivation actually come from? What are the factors that have led to that state of having a low motivation? And here talking about and thinking about concrete economic opportunities, whether it is wage employment and self-employment. And when you ask initially about the challenges, is that in the whole discussion that we're having, what I've seen with development partners is the narrative is very much focused on the supply side, right? So the supply side programming, very practically, to educate young people, to train young people. That's allow me to say, relatively straightforward and relatively simple, intervention to do. But at the same time, we need to look at the demand side and say, in some contexts, it's also a matter of there simply a lack of economic opportunities that also young people deem or that they value, right, and that they appreciate, or that aligns with their aspirations. Right? So we need to look into, in sociology, you have this kind of concept of an opportunity structure that you really need to look into this. So what are at the local level, assuming, the rural countryside of Ethiopia, for an adolescent 15-year-old girl, what are the concrete opportunities available to her, accessible to her, and then to kind of build it up from there. Not assuming she may, migrate into the urban space. But so what is the opportunity structure? And here also think about, and this is where, I've been trying to encourage thinking more, what I said earlier about work-based learning modalities, to see what is there on the ground, what is happening, how can young people develop skills beyond the school, right? In an informal or formal work-based learning modality with local enterprises that reflect, that are part of the local opportunity structure, right? Because these are somehow the pathways for their environment that are most likely for them to pursue in one way or another, right? And in many cases, it is simply also that lack of economic opportunities, or the lack of even modalities for work-based learning, or the lack of formal wage labor, or a very constrained opportunity structure in what enterprises young people can actually, in a given locality, actually set up, right?
Yeah. I think the word motivation, there's so much to unpack, right? Because it's not only whether they want to wake up to study or put in efforts to learn a certain skill, right? It's from what I hear from you is, even if they put in efforts to learn that skill, they might not see that there is, employment at the end of the road. Or there are also other factors like what Yevgeniya was talking about, like confidence, because they could be motivated, but they're not confident that they can qualify for that. So there's just so many sub skills and nuances, right, when we work with people. So I just want to be very conscious of the time because we have so many questions, and thank you so much everyone for asking the questions. So I'm just going to, jump right into the questions that was given to us. One question was from Elizabeth Dining. I hope I pronounced your name properly, and I think I would direct that question to Roland, okay? So Elizabeth is interested in exploring how we can enable young people to use human-centric design skills to tackle the design problem of their own learning and employability by, for example, by adapting materials like Design Your Life, Design Your Work Life, which came from Stanford and are aimed at adults, but have a lot of potential for adaptation for young people. Just wondering, Roland, what is your reaction to that?
Thank you for giving me that question, Janine. It's an important question, and Elizabeth, I think there are different ways of looking at it. And I mean, sometimes when we talk about human-centered design skills, in some cases we use different terminology where we are more or less thinking about the same thing. And we have integrated these types of approaches into, I'm talking about Aflatoun, in our Afla youth material, specifically on taking these youth through a process where they are themselves sitting in the driving seat, going through a package of exercises. The specific link to Stanford, I would need to check. And at Aflatoun, we're very interested to explore this further. We have a new agreement with UNICEF to specifically look at the human-centered design working, and we'll be more than happy to have a side discussion with you on this to further explore sharing experiences, because we at Aflatoun could definitely learn more from this from other partners as well. Not answering your question, but I'm highlighting that we are very interested to further explore this with you.
Thank you so much, Roland. And then there's another question from Shamali about digital literacy. So digital literacy becomes a dire necessity during the pandemic. Can somebody share best practices with regards to that? And Shamali also mentioned that Sri Lanka has a very high literacy rate of over 95%, but financial literacy is actually really low, or digital literacy is really low. I can quickly speak to that, right? I think when we think about literacy, many times we're thinking the ability to read, and sometimes it's really the ability to just read out the words, right? And I would want to challenge us to think about literacy one step further by thinking about even also comprehension. And many times, even in the countries that we worked in, literacy might seem to be very high, but the way that they track literacy is really, through a survey, are you literate, yes or no, tick, right? And that's how you track a very high literacy rate. But that has really very little correlation to the ability to comprehend things. And when comprehension is low, or critical thinking or reasoning is low, it is actually very hard to pick up or learn new things. And that's why learning new skills or employability skills or financial literacy skills and other skills will the learning curve or the learning pace will be a lot longer. So what we do is in a few steps. One step is that we do digital literacy training for educators and facilitators, and we feel that that's really, really very essential today, because they are the one who will disseminate the message to other to their audience. And I can't remember whether your organization is one of the organizations we have already done the sessions with, but very happy to conduct the sessions for the organizations present. I think the second thing from the technology providers standpoint is that we, and I was just discussing with Google's Asia Pacific president, is how do we design technology so that it is within reach for the audience is another thing to think about. Over the pandemic, over the last 1 year, 30 to 40 million new internet users came online. And the way that they use digital tools and the way that they interact with technology is completely different. So I think this is not just one side, education and digital capacity building side that needs to put in place, but also our responsibility as people who create technology to create technology that's within reach, that is easy to onboard and intuitive for the audience. And I don't know if I'm just going to pick up another kind of questions, and I think this will be something that most of our speakers can jump in as well. So how can John Denny was asking, how can we shift government provided education to focus on relevancy? To me, their failure seems to be the Ministry of Education, who pour in their resources into what appears to be increasingly mismatched academic-focused curriculum that does not directly relate to life or employability needs. I wonder any of the speakers have a reaction to that?
Yeah, I should say that it's a great problem, and I assume not only in those countries where we have been implementing the EU4Youth project. I guess it's typical for a lot of systems and countries. Like what we have faced in our problem, there is in our project, there is a great mismatch between the formal education and the needs from the labor market, and the skills which the young people should possess to be successfully employed, or to be sustainable and successful. Actually, in our project, we had a kind of a advocacy component to advocate for the systemic change in the education system of the participating countries. But you can imagine, and you know how much time it would take, and it would need to shift the government or to change something. So we just had to be more proactive and give concrete opportunities to the young people to a little bit lessen, decrease this mismatch between the demand and demand of the labor market and the available skills. By means of what? By means of the non-formal education, but by means of the Aflatoun curriculum on life skills, on employability skills, by means of the vocational and other training and education opportunities, entrepreneurship trainings, internships, work-based learning opportunities, which gave them the practical tools and the real life sensation and understanding of what the labor market is and what the demands of the employers are.
Yeah, I think that I mean, you know, I'm optimistic that education needs to be a lot more agile. In fact, if you see, you know, when Android phones or Android developers or iOS developers became a real job, it took universities 10, 15, or sometimes 20 years before, you know, this curriculum was placed in the curriculum, right? Or social media marketing, right? How many universities are teaching marketing through TikTok, for example, because it's a new trend, but how, you know, it usually takes a longer time to get into a formal institute. I guess that's why where digital learning, right, online learning comes and plays a part. I don't know if there's any I don't know if anybody has some last words, perhaps, to wrap up the call.
Maybe can I come in and also build on the last?
You can.
On the last question on working with governments and shifting. Of course, it's governments are being approached by so many different initiatives. And if I would be working in a curriculum department, it would be very challenging because people are talking about climate change needs to be in the lessons, and this needs to be in the lessons, and this. And it is very difficult then to say, okay, but these skills is more important than all the other ones. I do think that you need to work with curriculum departments, but you also need to bring in many other stakeholders, not only the youth themselves, but also like central banks, ministries of finance, ministries of youth. You have to do it together. I think the other experience we are seeing at Aflatoun is that you don't have to come up with specific lessons on these skills. You can integrate it into existing subjects like math and other areas where actually it becomes more lively and more applied, the existing lessons. So there are many lessons around the world. At the same time, I also think we're in a period of opportunity. Of course, we're all talking about the closed schools and things like that, but we are seeing, at least at Aflatoun, we are being approached more and more by governments, them requesting us to work with them. And we've signed in the last 6 months 8 MOUs with governments. And this is like the DRC, this is Haiti and other places who are asking, work with us to integrate these essential skills into the national curricula. So I think there are opportunities are out there right now. And I see in the comments, of course, is the offline and the online challenges, and you really need to be locally contextualizing what works best. But at this moment, if we work together, we can do great things.
Yes, thank you so much, Roland, for the last words. Absolutely, digital should not be, and it really is the responsibility of everybody, right, to design digital products to unite rather than divide. And I think if I were to pick up a common theme across this whole panel, the word often is collaboration. So we need to collaborate. We need to bring different stakeholders together. We need to also involve the youth as part of their solution, and also the governments, the schools, and all of us here to be, and I'm sure maybe this is an international phrase, it takes a village to raise a child, right? So it takes all of us to raise the youth and the future of our society. So thank you so much for the very lively discussion and all the questions coming in. I'm so sorry that we might not be able to, address everybody, but we'll love to continue this conversation offline. And thank you so much for tuning in.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Have a great evening, day ahead.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.